Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my remote co-host, Maricella Herrera. Hi, Maricella. Hey. It's been so long.
It really has. It feels like forever.
The longest we've gone without seeing each other in real life.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, when you go back to El Salvador, you're usually gone for a couple weeks, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, but I never go for like 3 weeks, and it's been 3 weeks by now.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is. It's I don't know what the right word for it is. It's an interesting time, and I think we're all realizing the things that we miss, that we didn't appreciate enough. So I appreciate you, Maricella, and I miss you.
I appreciate you too, and I miss you too. You know, I'm an introvert, and I never thought I would say I miss just seeing people, but I really do.
You know, a lot has changed depending on where our listeners are located. You may be further along or in that change, or maybe just starting. I know I'm having conversations with my family that's down south that mimics the mindset I was in a few weeks ago, and now they're there. So now I'm adeptly equipped to support them. But a lot has changed for many of us, but something for small business owners is they're still fighting, they're still working hard day in and day out to keep their businesses going, to support their workers, and to deliver on the impact that they want to have. And one area that's been heavily impacted during COVID-19 are restaurants. And our guest today, Deepti, is specifically using her ingenuity and her business and her political and social capital to support restaurants in powerful ways.
Yeah, she's great. I remember she spoke at one of our events not so long ago when events were still being held in person.
Yeah, ironically, she spoke at our event back in January where we were talking about, creating your plan for 2020 or, kind of new year, new you type thing. So, a lot's changed during that time. We would not have ever imagined that we would be where we are today. And that's, it's something that I'm just inspired by when it comes to entrepreneurs, and particularly those that, can be resourceful and can be creative and can pivot and can really focus on meeting the greatest need at that time. Is, where Deepti was a few months ago and where she's come to today, is still along a similar trajectory in terms of who she serves and the type of work she does, but she's going about it in a very different way and with a renewed sense of purpose and mission. Because it's never been more critical than it is right now.
I can't wait to hear what she has to say.
Let's get to the interview. Deepti, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast. It's just an honor to have you here, and I think we've got so much to talk about relating to not just the important work that you do, but just the world we're living in today. So if we could just start with a little bit of background, tell us about yourself and some of the work you are committed to right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity and, the Ellevate community, of course, and all the work that you guys have been doing for years and now even more so to connect people. So thank you. My name is, again, Deepti Sharma. I'm the founder of 2 companies and 2 children. My first company is FoodtoEat. Non-pandemic days, we are a corporate catering concierge service where we partner with over 100 local restaurants that are immigrant, woman, or minority-owned, run-led. And we essentially help these restaurants book catering opportunities at large corporate offices and getting these corporations to think about how they can source, catered meals from these local businesses. So really thinking about how they can diversify their purchasing power by investing in local economy. And then second, how can they create a more inclusive environment by providing food from representative of the people that they've hired, so from all over the world, and really kind of create this more inclusive environment through something as simple as food, because food is sustenance. Food is like everything, right? It gives us joy, it gives us happiness, it provides us with strength and ability to kind of move through our day. That's what we normally do. Given in today's climate, our revenue went down to zero with Food to Eat, and we decided, instead of just kind of sitting back and seeing what happens to the industry, why not try to play our part and help the community that we've built? So we started to fundraise on March 14th, and we've raised about $16,000 on our own, and are looking to raise more. But essentially what we want to do with the money is to buy meals from local restaurants that we partner with that are still open, and take those meals and try to get them to people that are in need. So we've donated to hospitals. We're now trying to focus on communities that are food insecure, and see if there's families that are in need of food, because we know that loads of people have lost their jobs, and while they wait for unemployment checks, this is just a simple way for us to be able to provide for their families. And so that's what Food to Eat has been doing today. And then my second company, which I started with my husband, is Bikky, Bikky. And on a normal basis, we're a CRM for restaurants, essentially helping restaurants take data from different data points, like their delivery apps, their point of sale, their loyalty apps that they're using, and essentially helping them aggregate that data to better understand who their customers are. So essentially, sometimes I'm still getting emails from restaurants about they haven't seen me in 30 days, yet I am coming to their restaurant on a regular basis, because through their reservation system, I'm not making reservations through that system. So that system is telling them that Deepti Sharma isn't coming in on a regular basis. But if they look at their point of sale data and see all of my transactions, I'm coming in to get, a smoothie every day or whatever I might be buying. And so we're trying to aggregate this data so that they better understand their customers. When we started seeing this pandemic happening, we realized that we, again, wanted to kind of reach out to the community, and we started seeing all sorts of ways that third-party services were reacting. We saw Seamless, Grubhub doing sorts of deferring fees as opposed to helping the restaurants with relief. I think that really hit us hard when they said, yeah, we won't charge you the fees today. We'll defer them to 2 months later. And if you want this, kind of initiative, then you have to sign a year contract that you'll stay partnered with us. And I thought that was kind of ridiculous. And so my husband and I were thinking of what can we do? And so we created eat.bikky.com, which is essentially a kayak for online ordering. And so what we're doing is we're directing consumers to order directly from restaurants from their websites. So if you want to order from Dos Toros, you wouldn't go to Grubhub. You would go to Dos Toros' website and order directly from them, so that they can keep their margins instead of giving them to a Seamless or Grubhub. And so that was our way of kind of initiating a way to help the restaurants that are currently open and trying to kind of survive in the midst of this pandemic. And then my two children, the first one is Zubin, who's 4 years old, and Chetan, who's 2 years old.
No, kiddos. I'm really moved by the work that you're doing and by the connection to your customer, right? And during this time, I personally am thinking a lot about how do you be that authentic leader? How do you really, at your core, look to serve your customer and look to solve their problems? You kind of went to the heart of the matter, which is okay, the restaurants, they need to stay open for all of the reasons that you mentioned. Their workforce, many of whom, 60% of essential workers in New York City are women, 75% are people of color. Restaurants are still considered essential. How do we keep that viability going? But especially if, people aren't going to restaurants, or if companies who typically are buying from restaurants now have a distributed workforce and they're not doing that. The innovation that you show here to really say, okay, what is their problem and how do we solve it? And how do we look at solving that problem in a new way in light of the current environment? And I just want to take a moment to honor that, because I think it's a true sign of a leader who is going to jump in there and care so much about your customer and think of innovative and different ways with which to support them during this time.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I was on a call earlier and somebody asked me what I'm doing to for self-care. And I was like, I don't think I've actually thought about that yet. And it's just because I don't know. I'm a New Yorker. I was born and brought up in this city. My parents came here when they were like 17, 18, 19. And I like acknowledge the hard work that they did to kind of get themselves to where they are today. And I feel like the only thing I can do is to like pay back to this community that's like raised me in a way. Again, it's to honor and respect the people that are doing this day in and day out and never really given the proper respect. And I guess this pandemic has shown people how much this industry really means to our society at large. And, again, hopefully I can just try to do a small part to help them survive as an industry and as individuals.
Could you share other things you're hearing from the restaurant owners? I mean, are there other stories or experiences that could help connect our listeners more to, that journey and that, hardship that's being faced?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this like notion that, small business owners are rich, which they're not. Like people think that you own a business or you have a startup, that you must have money in the bank. And most restaurants operate like a lot of their employees do sometimes, right? Paycheck to paycheck. That's why so many restaurants shut down, right? People are like, well, why aren't they trying to do deliveries and this? And there's a couple of reasons. One is because of safety. They're thinking about of humans at large and like what they can do as a small part of their society today. And so they've shut down because they want to think about the safety. And then secondly, they just don't have the bandwidth, right? If they're only getting $1,000 worth of orders a day, that's not enough to cover rent, pay people, take a salary home for themselves. But all of those things are really important to think about. Some of the restaurants that are open are still hopeful that they can get through this and get by, but a lot of them are scared, right? A lot of them are scared about rent and they don't know really. They're all having conversations with their landlords, and landlords are also saying that, they have other bills of their own that they need to pay, and they have their own mortgages and this and that. And so I think there's this chain effect that's being affected. But as a community, I would say like, people are trying to do what they can by buying gift cards. But even that, I don't think is like actually the best thing to do, because you're helping them give a little bit of cash flow right now. And then the expectation is in 3 to 6 months, when they are able and capable of opening up, then they're expected to give you a free meal when they're using this money now to pay a bill because they don't have any cash flow. And so then they're expected again to come back in 6 months. So I think that like if you see a restaurant that's open, buy from them today. If you see that they have a GoFundMe page, donate to it, because at least there's no expectation in return. If you have a certain, and this just goes in general, whether it's you're trying to support a small business or not, if you have a skill or if you have something that you can offer pro bono, try to offer that right now, right? There's a lot of people that are lawyers and accountants that can help with small businesses to understand what do all of these loans even mean? What do they tell their employees to do? Should they be applying for unemployment? So yeah, I mean, I think those are things to think about as a community of like, what power do you hold to be able to help others?
And we can also donate to the efforts that you're raising for. I know you're on I Fund Women and on GoFundMe, is that correct?
Yes. So we originally started on GoFundMe, and then I had known about the I Fund Women community, but didn't realize I could raise funds there for this as well. But yeah, both communities have been great, and we're definitely fundraising still. We're getting requests every day. We just need more money to fulfill those requests. So yeah, I mean, if you have the ability, the financial stability to be able to donate, please donate yourselves as individuals. But we're also trying to ask for requests from companies. I had reached out to Whitney, the founder of Bumble, and they had donated $2,500 to us through our GoFundMe, which was amazing. They didn't ask us if we were a 501c3, because we're not. They just donated. And I think that's really important, is a lot of companies are donating to only the really large nonprofits at this time, and not donating fast enough to companies or organizations like us that are really moving quickly. As soon as money comes, we're donating another meal. So we're not waiting for something to happen. I think that's really important. And I want to acknowledge, Bumble for even doing that, because it was just amazing to see that like leadership that cared enough to just kind of make that move without any questions asked.
This is a bit silly, but I know that when people donate, they want to contextualize what that impact is. Mm-hmm. What is the average meal? I mean, how much impact would you have with $100 or $500?
Yeah, so we are trying to get our restaurants to do lower cost meals than they normally would serve. So we're trying to get them to do meals that are $8 to $12. On average, they're doing $10 meals. So, one meal costs $10. These meals are obviously to be able to help the restaurant survive. So we're not asking them to do $5 meals because they would make no money on that. And then it just defeats the purpose of what we're doing. So $10 meals, right? So $100 would get 10 meals. Something as basic as that. And just to put this out there, like, for example, we talked to a hospital today that needs 500 meals a day because their cafeteria shut down and most of the restaurants in their neighborhoods are shut down. The hospital workers are working around the clock, so they don't have time to go grocery shopping. And so they're unable to also constantly create meals for themselves. So the reason why we're also trying to support the hospital workers is because of that. They're in food deserts, even though they're in the city, in the 5 boroughs where there's usually a ton of restaurants open. And then we're reaching out to some schools that are in areas that don't have public schools that are giving out meals and see if families in their neighborhoods need meals.
I'm really just blown away. There's so much happening in this time that I think is affecting us, as humans, right? We're worried about our health, the health of loved ones, the unknowns and uncertainties, our businesses, we're isolated. But this is this instance of when you can do something.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we're spending a lot of time thinking about the impact on ourselves individually, but we have to think more collectively about the impact on others and how we can show up for others.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, I've been seeing people doing all sorts of kinds of fundraisers, and one that has become very personal that I saw somebody within our mutual networks doing was the tablets, like trying to organize to be able to fundraise for tablets because people aren't able to say goodbye to loved ones in hospitals because they're overcrowded and because of safety. So people are getting iPads to hospitals. And, I was talking to my brother who's also a doctor, and I told him about this initiative, and he was like, something else that would be helpful is walkie-talkies, so we can give walkie-talkies to our patients so that we as doctors aren't constantly exposing ourselves throughout the day and can stay as healthy as possible to continue to serve the people that are getting sick. So these are simple things but have huge impact. And this iPad thing was really interesting. When I saw that email, people just started kind of organizing and gathering and saying, yeah, I know somebody at Dell or Microsoft or AT&T, I can get access to this or this money. And I think that was really interesting to see. So even if you don't work in a certain industry doesn't mean you don't have contacts or a network. And so as we sit at home trying to kind of navigate through all of this ourselves, we can sit and think about how do we organize responsibly and kind of take advantage of the networks that we've built in our professional careers to be able to continue to help. And whether that's mental health services, a woman reached out to me and she said to me, she's like, you're a parent and I'm a parent mentor, and I can kind of just sit and talk to you and make you feel better. And I was like, okay, cool. That sounds great. I'd never thought about that for myself. And it was nice to see that somebody else reached out to just be like, I see you doing all this. How can I help you? So yeah, I mean, just that simple thing of what can I do to help is really important.
Yeah, it's so true. You mentioned earlier that you haven't been doing anything for self-care. You're, sheltering in place, you're in the city, you've got little kids, you're, pivoting quickly a business to have impact. Clearly, it's something that is around the clock. I mean, restaurants are nonstop. This isn't a 9 to 5. You've got so much passion and heart behind this. And I think that that's something that I worry about for myself and many others that I care about is burnout is not the right word because that just feels so trite given the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But we need you, I need you, the restaurants need you to keep being able to do what you're doing because it's special and it's needed. And so how are you going to be able to sustain this? And how, what can others who are in similar positions learn from that?
I'm still figuring it out, honestly, to tell you the truth. Every day I wake up and I say to my husband, we need to create a schedule, a schedule where somebody goes for a walk. And we live in a 1-bedroom apartment normally, but my parents live 10 minutes away and we moved in with them. They're in a house and they're also kind of figuring this out and navigating the situation for themselves. But every day I wake up and all of us are like, you need to go outside and walk. You need to go on the treadmill and you need to make sure you're doing something for yourself. And I think we haven't done it because none of us have just sat down and talked to each other and being like, how are you? And so we're still figuring it out. And I think that hopefully this weekend, I think that might be the time where we finally sit down and say, so that we don't all crash, let's create a way to sustain this for the long term, right? Because this is our new reality right now. I don't believe that we'll be done in 3 weeks. This will be here till at least May, June. is the way I've been seeing it and realizing it. So I'm just trying to kind of hopefully spend time to like create that schedule for myself, because we've never been in this place. We're all people that are constantly working and moving, and my kids have not even seen me this much since they've been born.
I know. I know.
I'm sure with you as well. Like, you're a working parent, and like you're running an organization that's like based on community and events. So it's such a new norm when you're just on your computer all day and they're like, what is mom even doing?
I mean, I do think about it a lot because, our community are women at work. Many are struggling with kind of the balance between, what this new normal is and home and non-equally distributed workload and all of that. And a lot of like mental stress and anxiety. And so it's about, how can community really support you during this time? And I think a lot of times community kind of feels like a buzzy word and everyone's talking about it. And that's great because, in a time where we are so physically isolated, how do we create pathways for that virtual connection? And so similar to you, where it's okay, how do I really understand my customer and try to solve their needs? I mean, I'm of the same mindset, which is, what are the ways that we can best be of service? And that keeps me going, and that keeps our team going, because we know we see it. We see from our members just, the stories of impact. But, more broadly, and particularly for our listeners, and you mentioned, Deepti, like some of the ways, we can support your GoFundMe campaign. There's the walkie-talkies, there's iPads. I mean, there's a number of ways in which we can look to support others during this time. But specifically, as we talk about immigrants and women and minority-owned businesses, why should we focus efforts on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the reason why I started my business was mainly because they were underserved, right? And most companies that are starting anything don't start with the mindset of what can I do for the immigrant population or for women. It's really rare that we see that. And so I think that we need to think about, what do these communities mean to us individually and to our society at large? And I think that, to me, it's who I am, and that's why I do it, because it matters. But the number one reason is because I know they're underserved, they're underrepresented. People haven't created businesses for them, and so that's why I continue to do it, right? We started the I Major Food initiative that we did, which was like photographing our owners, chefs, and operators, mainly because they weren't asked about their own stories. Even if you look at the stories that are being written in the New York Times and in most places, until like the first week was mainly like you were hearing about Danny Myers and Tom Colicchio's. And I love and appreciate them as individuals, but they're white males, right? Successful white males in this industry. What happened to the brown and black communities that have been a part of the backbone of this community and this industry of restaurants? And so to me, I think storytelling is really important, and we should continue to tell the stories of everyone, because they all matter. We all have our unique experiences and backgrounds that are really essential and important to the narrative of our humanity as a society. And so how do we support? Tell our stories if you can. Ask us questions, ask us what we're going through, ask us what our communities need, and let us provide. Let us be the ones that you turn to when you're in need of something, because we've always been there and we will always continue to be there. And so I think that's really essential, is just like representation. And if you, after all of this, like are at a company that needs food, think about my company, FoodtoEat, right? And say like, yeah, I'm going to commit that every single order that comes through this door is going to be from a woman owned or an immigrant owned or a minority owned, because I know that they lack the resources and the capital because people aren't giving it to them enough. So I think that's how I think about this, and how I think people can at least contribute to, our narrative as an immigrant community.
Excellent. All right, Deepti, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions and give me an answer in a sentence or less. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I think I'm an extrovert, but I'm slowly sometimes feeling like an introvert.
What's your favorite day of the week?
Wednesday, because it seems like the most hopeful day, right? Like you made it to the middle, and then you see the weekend that it's like slowly creeping up, and it's just exciting.
Yeah, I like that. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
generally an early bird, but these days, because I'm with the kids 24/7, I'm becoming a night owl.
Who's your dream dinner guest?
Ooh, dream dinner guest. So if I was to pick somebody that has passed away, it would be my dad's mom, because she's the only grandparent that I've never met. And if it was somebody that was alive, I would say Michelle Obama.
What's your Monday morning staple? Activity, food, drink?
Activity, food, drink. So before I injured my knee, it was getting up and running. And then coming back to my kids to try to do some like meditation with them.
And what's one final thought you'd want to leave with our listeners?
You are enough, and everything you're doing, to all the parents, you're doing a great job. Just keep at it, and just know that you're okay. You'll be okay.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes, give us 5 stars, and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EllevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.